All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's live stream, the special, I guess, kind of special edition of the LCI Green Room, but it's um, also going to be just a stream of another Spaces, which I already did last night. Probably going to be doing more of those here in the future, which should be a lot of fun. But tonight's a stream that's going to include uh, people from the Libertarian Party Christian Caucus and Pro-Life Caucus. And we're going to be talking to Angela McArdle and some other people from the Libertarian Party and do some have some conversations, do some breakdown over the election and some of the recent events that have transpired since then. So it should be a lot of fun. As always, please make sure that you like this stream and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, more people can find us, more people can watch our content. We greatly appreciate that. We're going to be starting very soon, so I'm going to begin getting myself ready to stream this Spaces over here on the YouTube. But I gotta scroll and find it on my news feed because that's the only way I know how to. I don't know why, and if anyone knows this, let me know. It's really hard to find Spaces on X when you're using it on a desktop, and I don't know why, and I find that very annoying. But all right, here's the space post. So I'm gonna click here and click here. All right, so that's right there, and I'm going to hit present, share screen, and we're gonna do the entire screen of this one. Share. Boom. All right, so that's queued up for when they actually go live, which will be in a couple minutes. Although I think what I'll do is keep myself in the solo setup, or I don't know, I might fool around with the setup a little bit. I'm not sure because there's not really not much to watch on the Spaces, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it's just listening, which is fine. But while we're waiting here, those of you who are watching, if you want to say hello, if you want to ask a question, make a comment, it's been a busy day in the news. Like literally just before we hopped on, we found out Trump's appointed, and I already forget his name. Good grief. Hold on, let me pull it up here. So for the Department of Government Efficiency, he has appointed Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, which I think is great. It's actually like one of the first great appointments and announcements that he's made, that Trump has made since becoming president elect. I have mixed feelings about the other appointment he just made. Here we go. It's Pete Hegseth, who is good on Defend the Guard, and some people have brought that up to me in the comments, which like, okay, that's fine, that's good. Like I'll take that. But he's not that great on other things. He's very like pro-Israel, like, you know, the Palestinians are animals and let's bomb Iran and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know what a realistic expectation could have been for Secretary of Defense. I would have hoped for someone less neocon-y, but I guess if we're going to get someone who kind of defends most of the neocon positions, if they at least throw us a bone with Defend the Guard, that's something. You know, we do have to have tempered expectations, I guess, for what statists and Republicans like Trump are going to do. You know, early on when we were like, you know, hashtag no Pompeo and hashtag no Nikki Haley and people and they seemingly listened to that, and Donald Trump Jr. Responded to Dave Smith on Twitter and was like, you know, yeah, we're gonna keep neocons out. I got like a little optimistic. I was like, well, maybe we're not gonna get libertarians, but maybe we'll get like, you know, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard types who not perfect anti-war anything, libertarians or anti-war moderates or etc. Like they're not perfectly principled anti-war. They're typically still pro-Israel, but they're at least not like, you know, war drum beating neocons either. Whereas this Pete is kind of, from the little bit I've seen, it's not very reassuring. But I'm gonna check in. Again, I see some of you are watching. If you have any questions, any comments you want to make, go ahead and I'll answer until I see the spaces go live, and then I will we'll switch over to that. I've clicked on it. Okay, here we go. I think it just started. Let me know. Hold on. Can you guys on YouTube, can you guys let me know if you can hear that? Give me some ones or thumbs up in the chat. There we go. Ah, damn. I probably didn't. Hold on, let me try this again.
Thought we would
All right,
get
let me know if
together
you can hear that.
again with a pro-life
Rise to Liberty.
libertarian
That should be better now. I
caucus
forgot to hit the
and
share audio button.
do a post-election space. So we've got some pretty cool topics to cover, and we've got some really neat guests as well that are all really relevant to the election, our role as libertarians, our role as Christians. We've got like some anti-war with Diego is going to be coming on. And yeah, since we're a little bit later to this post-election discussion thing, the cool thing is we've got some extra stuff to talk about that people that might have done their post-election breakdown a day or two after didn't quite have yet. So we could even talk a little bit about, reactions and thoughts of why or what's going on with some appointments, good, bad, why he might have chosen them. And yeah, so that's kind of cool that we have a little bit extra to talk about since the election has been over for a little bit longer, for about a week. So I'll start with introducing myself, and then our speakers can introduce themselves as well. My name is Kara Smith. I'm the founder of the Christian Caucus. I am in Southern California in San Diego. And yeah, I'm a mom of 3, a CrossFit coach, do stuff with the caucus. I've actually just been starting to try to coordinate with some Christian leaders in my county to start trying to impact our county. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm working on. I'm also interested in helping out with Defend the Guard as much as I can. And that's about it. Go ahead to our co-host, Albert.
Hi, my name is Albert Veldhuizen. I've been involved in the Libertarian Party since 2016, and I'm the secretary of the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus and one of the founding organizers of the caucus, and created the website for the caucus and been very active in going to different state conventions in the past and promoting the caucus. And our claim to fame, I guess, in the Libertarian Party is that we're instrumental in getting rid of the abortion plank at the 2022 convention. And other than that, I spend my time between Florida and Virginia, and I have a family that still lives in Virginia, but eventually our plan is to kind of moved down to Florida. It's more friendly. And other than that, I'm very involved overseas, and especially in the country of Paraguay. So just have a lot of different interests, and but my main political interest is the pro-life issue, and obviously I'm also convinced libertarian. So I think the Pro-Life Caucus was really my thing, and the best way I can contribute to the libertarian movement. So that's a brief introduction for myself.
Thank you, Albert. All right, we'll move on to Jacob, one of our co-founders.
Right, can you guys hear me all right?
I can. Yep.
Okay, good. I'm simulcasting this to our YouTube channel, so I've only done this a few times. Just wanted to make sure that the audio was good. So yeah, I'm Jacob Winograd. I'm another, I guess, one of the co-founders of the Christian Caucus, and I am the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, which is part of the Libertarian Christian Institute, part of our Christians for Liberty network, and I've been active in the Libertarian Party since, I was a member around 2018, but I didn't really get active until about 2020 during the lockdowns, and real excited to be here tonight and hear our various guests talk about what's going on in the world after this election.
Thanks, Jacob. And Jessica, since you're our other co-founder, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Well, I'm Jessica, and I'm also in Southern California. Kara and I met through our activities in the LPCA here. Lately, I've just been focused on my community through my church and, life things, but was involved with the LPCA and my county party for a bit. And I'm just excited to see what we can do in our local communities now, and loving to hear some of this news that we're going to talk about later with the pro-life movement. And I'm ready to go.
All right, thanks. And our other speaker is Jeremiah. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Jeremiah Campana here, Columbus, Ohio. Been a official paying member of the National Libertarian Party since around 2018. I host a podcast called Anatomy of the Church and State, where I invite guests on to talk about things going on in government and culture through the lens of Scripture, and do various volunteer work through several different organizations here and there. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So we had like a little outline. We were going to go with Angela to start, but she's not here yet. And Josh Smith is one of our special guests tonight. So I'm thinking, should we just start with him, guys? Since he's here already?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So just to, as we introduce Josh, I will remind people, or tell them for the first time if they weren't aware, that we did end up kind of late in the game, but we did endorse Josh when he was running for president. And we also endorsed him, we doubled down, for his state Senate run. So we kind of want to hear from Josh about kind of his thoughts. He can talk about the presidential election, his race at Senate, thoughts on how he whomped Chase with votes. Whatever he wants to start with is fine, and we'll probably have questions also from there. So welcome, Josh.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. Sorry, I was having some audio issues there. If you were talking to me before that, I apologize.
No, you're good. So do you want to start by talking about right now, and you want to talk about your Senate run? Do you want to give thoughts on the presidential election? It's kind of up to you where you feel like you're just dying to kind of start talking about.
Sure. It all kind of bleeds together. It's for me. It was obviously the presidential election. I kind of flipped course and endorsed Trump, and I know a lot of people were probably pretty upset with me over that. And that's okay. I understand that. I ran for the nomination for the Libertarian Party. I thought we could do a lot of things. nationally, if we were to get the nomination, I didn't get the nomination, didn't do enough to bring delegates to the convention. I think that, had we gotten the nomination, we would have done a lot better nationally than what we saw out of the Libertarian Party recently. But that's all speculation. I can't promise that's the truth. But I can say that I know for a fact we would have gotten a lot more concessions from Trump had we had somebody like me or me specifically. But I kind of came to this crossroads where I realized that we are always talking about how this is the most important election of our lifetime. This is the most, we always hear that. We kind of roll our eyes at it as libertarians, but I got to this crossroads where I was like, damn, they're coming after my kids' school and their genders. And, the inflation is out of control, and there's, wars ramping up with Iran and maybe China and Russia. And it's like, at some point I had to tell myself, like, okay, you have to do whatever you can to minimize this. And, I know there's been speculation as to whether I was paid by the Trump campaign to endorse Trump. I was not. I never received $1. I just realized that there was a real importance to BTFOing the left at some point. It's just this runaway roller coaster that is not getting better for families. And as people know on this call, I have a family with 7 children. I'm the lone breadwinner for a family of 9. It's not getting any easier. In fact, our grocery bills have gone up from at least $800 more a month than they were 4 years ago. And I want to do everything I can to try and take us back and get the roller coaster to slow down, because my children's future is on the line. And so I kind of made that executive decision from our family to endorse Trump and vote for Trump and be very public about it. Even as a libertarian, I know that some of my views over the last 4 years have changed quite a bit, and some people might call.
Sorry, Josh, I accidentally muted everyone, I think, or somebody did. So you should be able to go now.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you
Okay.
now.
They were still saying muted by host. So anyway, so after I lost the nomination at the national convention in Washington, D.C., I kind of walked around the convention and told everybody, like, I just want to go home and see my kids. It had been at least 14 days since I had been home. I was really missing them, and I knew that I had a lot to think about when I got home. And I came back and I talked to our state chair here in Iowa. Of course, I lived in a district that's heavily Democrat, run by Claire Celsey as the state senator, who is absolutely disliked by the majority of the state except for her own district. And the Republicans don't run anybody in that district. They will occasionally. Just to try and throw a win there, but it's almost impossible for them to get the win there. And I talked to my friends in the state house here who are Republicans, and they told me, if you run, we won't run anyone against you. All right, well, I'll put my name on the ballot and see what happens. Of course, we had moved, and we were having, we had the new baby and all this stuff. And so I didn't get to campaign the way I wanted to. And in fact, I specifically said I didn't want to raise $1. And when we talked earlier about me coming on the space, this is what I said. You may not like the answers about my state senator run. I didn't raise $1 purposely. I ran this national campaign for president. I had run a campaign for vice chair the 2 years prior. I'd run 2 campaigns for chair back to back over 4 years prior to that. And my supporters were drained. And so I didn't want to ask my supporters for any money. In fact, I never even set up a donation site for my state senate campaign. And but I did go around the community and talk to people, and I knew that there was a real sense of shift when it came to how much they enjoyed the policies that Claire was pushing for. We got a raw milk bill last year where they finally legalized the sale and trade of raw milk. She's been fighting that. She fights against all the farms here. She wants corporate interests in the farms here. She wants to get rid of the small farmers. It was all really basically easy stuff for me to talk to the community about in a libertarian way, and even really in a hardcore conservative way in some aspects. And so I did that, and election night we did 30% of the vote. I know that I got the highest vote totals of any candidate in Iowa, maybe the highest vote totals of any candidate in the country. I haven't seen anybody that's gotten 30% yet. from any other candidates, statewide candidates. So I think we actually set the record for this year, which is kind of cool. And maybe the highest vote total ever in the state of Iowa, even for a libertarian. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting to run a campaign and kind of know that you weren't going to be able to campaign the way you wanted to, but also not, like purposely not raise money and still get 30% of the vote. It almost makes me wish I had the time to go and run like a real campaign, because we could have really put some hurt to her. But and so now I'm kind of back to that same crossroads of what I want to do next. You know, I know I'm obviously when we moved, it took some time to build the new studio. We're almost back to having a show again, which will be nice. Hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have that back up and running. And politically, I'm burned out. You know, I basically was on a national campaign from 2017 through 2024. I've been to 49 states. I was at one point the largest recruiter for the Libertarian Party for 2 years. And I'm really just enjoying hanging out with my family and my kids, and not having to leave all the time constantly. I mean, I do still leave for work sometimes here and there, but it's not like I'm gone every single weekend like I was before. But I don't think we're done. I think that, you know, we're gonna start looking at some key races, at least here in Iowa, whether that be U.S. Senator, U.S. House, or a state race. I think we're going to start looking at some races here that we can identify and win, and you know, get back to the drawing boards here in about a year or so. So, but yeah, that was basically the, you know, the presidential election and cycle in a nutshell for me.
Yeah, you were definitely involved the whole way through, one way or another. So even when you were out, you just hopped back into the election cycle. And I
Yep.
really don't think like you're like, oh, you probably won't like to hear this, but I think one thing we've definitely learned is that like we don't just run libertarians to win, because I mean most of the time it's not feasible, right? So I think what we've found is there's other reasons, whether it's concessions, whether it's to just like stick it to them, whether it's to just make a point. And so I think even just not raising money for you, it was more of like a strategic choice, and it was smart because, you know, why keep draining people when the intention was more to just give that Democrat in the district a hard time. So it makes sense, and I think it's cool that you did it.
Yeah, it's definitely more. That's really why I even put my name on the ballot, is because she won her Democratic primary with almost no work whatsoever, and then thought she was just going to coast through the general. And I at least wanted her to think,
You
you
at
know,
least
that she
made her
had to
work.
work. Yeah, she had to go out and work. She had to go out and because I think she, right after I announced, like 2 or 3 days later, she put out in the Iowa Democratic newsletter, like the Democratic Party newsletter, she put out a call to action and said, please, if you guys have signs from the primary, don't get rid of them yet. We need them. And I mean, I made her have to go out and work the community again. So that makes me happy. But of course, we're a deep red state now. I mean, Iowa used to be a more purplish swing state even, and now it's so deep red we don't send anybody to Washington that's from the Democrats anymore. So I just wanted her to sweat it out a little bit, and she, you know, she's seen me and met me, and although we didn't get to have any debates, I got to call her out online many times, and she shared some of my stuff, and she was definitely feeling the heat, at least. So that's the important part.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. Albert, Jacob, Jeremiah, and Jessica, do you guys want to jump in and ask or throw, you know, bounce anything off of Josh?
Yeah, I got a question for you, Josh. Running as a candidate, you know, being so open about your faith, do you find, or did you find that you were kind of constantly defending your faith, or was it opening up opportunities for more fruitful conversations, so to speak?
So it's really funny. I definitely have to defend my faith to libertarians all the time. And of course, I think Democrats are at war with Christianity in general. And even if they won't admit that, it's the truth. But with the conservatives, and in Iowa, you know, I was one of the you know, most religiously Christian states in the country. So it's a lot easier here in a local race to be very open about your faith. Of course, I'm not ever going to be closed off about my faith again. I fell away from my faith for many years, and regaining the faith that I do have over the last, you know, 7 or 8 years has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. So I'm not interested in hiding my faith. But yeah, I think I think that when it comes to libertarians, I had to constantly defend my faith and my morals, really, to an extent, which is really it sucks because libertarians are like, well, you should put your political ideology over your faith, and I don't think that that's true anymore. I used to believe that, but I don't. I believe that if we're gonna if Christians in general are gonna involve themselves in politics and put their faith on the back burner, then you're not really doing God's will. And so I kind of, that was a crossroads for me too. I had to kind of let go of some of that, well, maybe we should just, let people sacrifice their children because that's what libertarians would do. And I came to the realization that, like, God creates governments, right? And it does say that in the Bible, and that, if there's going to be governments that govern us, then they should, be, in my opinion, doing God's will. And I don't think that allowing the murder of unborn children is doing God's will. And so, I've had some really eye-opening experiences when it comes to my faith and politics and stuff like that. And I don't think I don't think that's news to anybody, especially on this call. Obviously, people know that I'm very open about my faith, and that I do believe that it should guide our politics if we're truly Christian. And so, but yeah, to answer your question, libertarians, for me, the people who I was defending my faith to the most was always libertarians, and it has been for the last at least 4 years, especially through the presidential election, because nobody wants you to talk about it. They want you to put it on the back burner. They want you to talk about policy from only a libertarian standpoint, and it's like, that's just not something that I'm able to do anymore. And maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know, but to me, it's not. To me, it's just holding true to my morals and wanting a government that would, if we have to have one that governs in a way that I think is moral and just and does the right things when it comes to the sanctity of life.
Hey, one thing I would say though, Josh, when you were running for president, and vying for the LP spot, is I do think that while there was people that made them really upset and they wanted to push back, you stood above the other candidates who kind of lukewarmly shared that they were Christians and it wasn't really a big part of their messaging. They were wishy-washy on the pro-life issue, and I think that excited a lot of Christians in the party for you that
Oh,
otherwise may
sure.
have not
Yeah.
been as excited. So I think in a way it like worked against you, but for you, because you got good support and the right support for the right reason.
Yeah, and I agree. A lot of people are like, "Well, you got routed out at the national convention." It's like, all right, that's fine. But I feel like I helped to lead a movement of people who probably felt pretty voiceless in the Libertarian Party for quite some time when it comes to not just the pro-life issue, but just being Christian in general, and being what I consider just instead of dropping your actual principles to appease this heathenist, ravenous group of people who are like, you have to let women kill their babies. Like, I think I helped kind of open a lot of eyes, and make people understand that you can adhere to your Christian faith and still be a libertarian. And I think that's something that I know that Jacob's really good at doing too. I'm a big fan of his for doing that kind of stuff and kind of proven. Sorry, it's getting real dry out here in Iowa now. Jacob's really good at showing how you can be a Christian and a libertarian at the same time, and I appreciate that. And I think we need more voices like that.
I appreciate the kind words, brother. I wanted to ask you, I feel like you and I both see the sort of like, it's a bit of a dilemma where on one hand, when you're in sort of like conservative, Republican, even like MAGA circles, you're not having to defend your faith as much, although you are having to explain why our faith doesn't come along with uncritical support of America's greatest ally, quote unquote. And, why, if we're going to be pro-life, that includes, of course, rightfully standing up for the lives of not only the unborn, but, born babies and families living elsewhere, not just here in America, but in other countries that, our government's complicit in helping to destroy. So there's like an uphill battle there. And then with libertarians, it's like, okay, well, at least they're generally, anti-war along with us. But then we're having to defend our faith and we're trying to make the Libertarian Party politically relevant, which a lot of libertarians are resistant to. What are your thoughts on that in terms of moving forward after this? This was a really contentious cycle, not just like from the national standpoint of, Trump versus Biden, then Trump versus Harris, but also, for libertarians, especially guys like you who have been like, running nonstop. It's been contentious internally for libertarians and for Christians like you and I. How do we move forward in these spaces where we're trying to make libertarians better, but also coalition with Republicans and conservatives where we can, and make them better?
Sure, and it's kind of been a double-edged sword for me, because when I talk about Israel in libertarian spaces, it goes over pretty well. When I talk about it in conservative spaces, it doesn't go over as well. Obviously, we know that there's been a trick on the American conservatives that basically we have got to do everything in our power to defend Israel, and I've tried to be as loud and proud about the fact that God said that Israel is a citizenship of the heart for all the sons of Abraham, the people who accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and it's not a physical land, and that this is just a trick that's been pulled on conservatives and Christians, evangelical Christians especially, and it's worked. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people when I've talked about those things that are like, wow, I never really realized that. It's like a lot of people go to church every Sunday and they listen to the preacher talk, and they don't do a whole lot of studying themselves. And I think a lot of these people, if they just picked up their Bible, they'd understand that this just isn't the truth. But in the libertarian spaces, when you bring that aspect into it, people are like, what? You're crazy. What do you mean the Bible? No one wants to hear about the Bible. And so it's been hard, but I think, as far as the Libertarian Party goes, I think it's going to be really tough for the Libertarian Party over the next 8 years. I think that Chase Oliver set the party back 16 years at least. I mean, he barely got better numbers than Bob Barr from 2008. And we're talking like 100,000 votes more than Bob Barr did in 2008. Now, there's a lot of people out there looking to place blame all over the place, whether the state parties didn't support his run, or the national party didn't support his run, or this or that and this and that. The fact of the matter is that the party never had the money this year to support a presidential candidate. And somebody who sat on the national committee for at least 4.5 years, I could tell you 100% that there was never going to be a large budget to support a presidential candidate this year. And I think, look, Angela and I have had our past. I know that it's been public in some aspects, but I think what Angela's done has been great. The fact that she's been able to go out there and build these coalitions is like anything I had bad to say about Angela went out the window when I realized that she was actually using the party to influence winners. And that's huge. That's a huge deal. The Libertarian Party has never in its 50 years in existence had that kind of power, to where we can have a president go on television, national television, start talking about ending the income tax, and start talking about freeing Ross, and talking about not taxing overtime, and talking about ending wars, and like all the stuff that we talk about as libertarians. At least Trump got on national television and talked about it. Now it's yet to be seen if he's going to do that. I think he's staffing his admin wrong. Of course, I think he's made some good decisions and some really bad decisions, and he's probably going to make a lot more really bad decisions, because once you're in the swamp in DC, you're surrounded by the swamp whether you want to be or not, and people are going to give you bad advice. I'm just hoping that there's enough people like Vivek and Elon and obviously Donald Trump Jr. and some of these guys, Ron Paul, of course, who can get in his ear and say, hey, that's a bad decision, and change some things. And I really hope that that's the truth. But I think the Libertarian Party's got a very tough task in front of it going forward because of the presidential election. Now, when we were all vying for that position back at the convention, I think we all kind of knew then that it was going to be a tough year for the Libertarian presidential candidate, no matter what, because, when Robert Kennedy jumped in, we all kind of knew that was going to shake some things up. But I can tell you 100%, there's probably at least two guys on that candidate panel at the national convention in the debate who would have done better than RFK Jr. did after announcing that he was no longer running. So we're set back. The party's set back. And where we go from here is going to be entirely dependent on if the party can get its shit together and stop fighting each other over the dumbest stuff. and trying to place the blame on this person and that person and this person, that person. We have some influence right now, but we don't have a lot of money. We ran a really bad presidential candidate that basically was the woke left, but gayer. And we can go up or we can go backwards. I don't know where we go. Like, I just, for the first time in the party's history of that I've been with it since at least 2010, I can't tell you what the party can do next. You know what I mean? At least back then I had a kind of a blueprint. So I ran for chair. I decided, we needed to focus more on getting out aggressive media and recruiting better candidates and this kind of stuff. Now it's kind of like everything's a toss up, and it's really going to come down to what the national leadership does now, what the candidates look like in the midterms here coming up in a couple years. It's really gonna take shape over the next year, and I don't know that it's something that's going to be super fixable in the next year or two. It's going to take a couple election cycles to really get the party running on all cylinders again. But I do have faith in our national chair. I think that she's done a really great job doing what she had with what she had, and I'm excited to see what they can bring about. But I am very worried about the future of the Libertarian Party, and wondering if it's going to be a viable party anymore. So.
I agree.
I know we lost lots of ballot access around the country. So
we kept it here in PA, so I'm glad for that. Well, I had one other quick question. What do you think? Is it just trying to recruit people to the party who are more like-minded like us, or what else needs to be done to try to, not only kind of rebuild the party financially, but to try to ensure that the culture of the party and the strategy of the party that's being pursued, it keeps in line with what's going on now, rather than having a reversion back to sort of the old, blue-pilled guard version of LP politics.
Sure. And oh man, I spent 6 years trying to recruit people like us to the party. I mean, that was my whole mission. Get as many people like me into the Libertarian Party, make them see that it was a viable political party, make them see that it wasn't just a home for the woke left that felt disaffected by the Democrats. We did that. We did that. We took the whole party over, and I don't know, in some respects, that it's better than it was before. I do know that obviously what Angela and the National Committee had done up to the election here has been great. And maybe that's the path for the Libertarian Party, is to make it a giant kingmaker. I mean, really, if you look at the breakdown on some of these states, the difference between Joe Jorgensen and Chase Oliver was the same amount of votes that Donald Trump won by, in some of these states. That's pretty crazy to think about, that many. And we could speculate all day on if those were all libertarian votes or not. It's probably likely that they weren't. Many of them were probably independents, and other. But that's a pretty big deal. I think there was 4 states, and I'm not going to remember which states they were, but I think there was 4, maybe 5 states where the difference between Joe and Oliver is what Trump won that state by. So, that's pretty influential if you think about it. When you got a party who they didn't, obviously didn't explicitly endorse Trump, but definitely endorsed beating Joe Biden at all costs, or beating Kamala Harris at all costs, and putting the emphasis on we need to use whatever leverage we have to influence policy. Maybe that's the path for the Libertarian Party. But like I said, I don't know where we go from here. And I think, obviously, as a guy who has been in national leadership for a couple of terms and ran for national leadership for a couple of terms and then ran a presidential campaign, I don't want to be in national leadership anymore. I've had a couple of people say, hey, you could run for this and that. And I'm like, man, I just don't think that's my space anymore. I think that they've surpassed me. And they have their own ideas, but I think it's really going to come down to national leadership, and I hope that Angela and them guys are going to sit down and talk about, and I know they will sit down and talk about what's the next direction of the party. Where do we take it from here? We just ran the worst candidate we have in 16 years. The results were abysmal, but we also had the leverage to influence some policy and maybe some cabinet picks. And there's talks of Joe Rogan with Dave and Trump on there at the same time. I mean, we're talking about some really cool, huge wins for the libertarians in the United States, with the worst possible outcome for the libertarian presidential candidate. So it's an interesting time for us. I mean, do we keep building on that leverage aspect, or do we start trying to find candidates? I don't know. I don't know what that answer is, man. It's the first time I probably haven't had, what I would think was the answer for the last 6 years or 7 years. So,
Hey, Josh. I have a few comments. I really love your focus on coalition building, and that of Angela as well. And I had a specific question about your state run. As I understand it, you didn't have a Republican opponent, right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of your state run, did you actively try to get the Republicans on board to support you? And
Oh yeah.
Please describe kind of your coalition building activities in your race.
So obviously, Jeff Shipley in the state house here, and Senator Carlin, and some of these other Republicans that are. I mean, Jeff Shipley is a Mises libertarian that won his state house election 3 terms ago now, I guess. As a Republican, and he comes over to the house for dinner and stuff. A good friend of mine. I've done work with him. When I first moved here in 2020 to Iowa, I spent a lot of time at the state house trying to push for the medical freedom stuff, because this is during COVID, and it's getting pretty worrisome out there in the world. And so I was down there trying to influence policy as much as I could be. And so I got to meet a lot of the Republicans there. And they explicitly told me if I was going to run in that district that they wouldn't run anybody against me. Of course, I think we got about 10,000 votes out of the 30,000 ballots cast. I know that Republicans, when we looked at the early voting, the Republicans pulled over 12,000 ballots. So we got a heavy percentage of the Republican vote here. And I know that I had Republicans, in fact, big Republican donors in the district. One that's is a sister of my wife's. We're pushing for us. A couple of the different churches, of course, the church that we go to, our pastor was also pushing for us to win. So, yeah, it was basically my whole coalition was the Republicans. I didn't have a lot. I mean, I didn't have any libertarian help in the district other than nomination papers and getting those into the Secretary of State. The state party did that for me, but it was all Republicans. I mean, it was I'd say probably there was 8 or more thousand of my votes came directly from the Republican Party. So that's who supported the campaign, and yeah, that was the coalition. It was me and the Republicans, even though they knew I was a libertarian and my ballot said libertarian, and it was yellow on the results and everything. So, but yeah, it was a total Republican vote for me. I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a way forward for the Libertarian Party, because in districts the Republicans won't contest,
and it's easy for me. I guess to do that coalition here in Iowa, because our Republicans do lean pretty heavily on a lot of the libertarian talking points when we're one of the best states for educational freedom. Obviously, if you guys know anything about that, we basically can homeschool in the state of Iowa. We don't even have to tell the government at all. There's nothing that you have to tell them. They also have a voucher system here for people who want to go that route. And then, of course, they have a lot of the what do they call it? Community choice charter schools all over as well. And then, we are a big farming state. They're relinquishing all kinds of, the Republicans here are relinquishing all kinds of regulations on the farming industry here. Of course, Kim Reynolds has signed into law and already started enacting the progressive tax plan to progressively lower the state taxes every year until they're gone. I mean, it's kind of already, it's easy for me to talk about those things to Republicans because it's the things they're already trying to do here. We passed constitutional carry. We wrote it into our constitution for the state. There's a bill that they're going to try and get past the legislature here to nullify all federal gun laws in the state of Iowa. it's pretty easy for a guy like me to coalition with Republicans in Iowa. Now I know that not all Republicans are like that. I mean, I once had a good friend named Mike Rufo who sat on the LNC with me from New Jersey, who explained New Jersey like there's the Democrats and there's the communists. There is no Republican Party there. In California it used to be about the same way. But if you look at the vote totals this year, that 40% of California voted red and 44% of New York voted red. So there's a big shift going on in the whole United States right now. I just am lucky enough to live in a state where that shift happened a long time ago.
Yeah, but I think that your situation is not unique. I mean, there are plenty of districts where one party or the other is not contesting.
Did I lose everybody? Can you guys hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear anybody else. So.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello?
All right. Okay.
I can hear everyone, but
did you want to make your point still, Albert, even if he can't hear for
the point I was going to make is that there are plenty of districts around the country that are similar to Josh's district. Where
did I boomer my audio somehow?
Yeah, it looks like Josh can't hear us, but we can hear him.
Can you hear us, Josh? Okay. I don't think he can. Sorry, go ahead, Albert.
Yeah, so I think going forward, that's one thing the Libertarian Party can do, is to concentrate on districts where you have one or the other party not contesting, and then drawing coalitions with the other party to advance the Libertarian candidate. And I think that is a way of getting a lot more vote totals, but also a lot more publicity. So that's just the comment I have.
Yeah, and I think we are starting to see some of that manifesting across different levels. I agree with you, Albert. I think we gotta move to our next guest because I just want to honor his time. I gave him a little outline before, and Josh is welcome to stay and participate still. Albert, can you, if Josh has requested, can you just add him as a speaker? And so next on here, let's see, where did he disappear? Okay, wait.
Let's see here. Okay.
I'm kind of driving now, so I can't really look down.
Okay, yeah, I just approved Josh as a speaker.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Josh, can you hear us? Okay, Josh. Here we go.
Hey guys, sorry, I totally got boomered there. I don't know. After Al asked me my question, I went on and on and on and on, and then all of a sudden I realized I couldn't hear anybody talking, and I don't know how much of that you heard, but
maybe he can reiterate that a little bit and you can respond, because I don't see Diego now. So go ahead.
You talking to me? You want me to reiterate what I said?
Did you hear me? Did you hear me talk about my coalition with Republicans and stuff here?
So Albert,
yeah, we heard everything.
Okay. That you didn't hear, and I was wondering if Albert could maybe kind of reiterate his point, so that now that you can hear, and then you can respond to that.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, my point was that I think a way forward for the Libertarian Party is exactly what you did, because I'm sure that you're not in a unique situation. There are plenty of other races around the country where one party or the other is not contesting, right? So the Libertarian Party can make a name for itself by contesting those seats and building a coalition. And that will gain publicity for the Libertarian Party, and also that helps in building a coalition and understanding on the issues that we agree on with the other parties.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, every year there's hundreds of uncontested races around the country, whether it's, a local mayor's race or a state rep race or a state senate race. Sometimes judicial races. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of races that are uncontested. The Libertarian Party does itself a disservice by not sticking somebody in every single one of those races. I'm just going to say that if you're not running an uncontested race and you have a party in that state, you're really missing out, because there's people that think, well, the Republicans didn't even run somebody here. I'm not going to go vote. You know what I mean? Or the Democrats didn't run someone here. I'm not even going to go vote. And I mean, I look at it this way: like, if there's a Republican that's doing every single thing that you want done politically, maybe don't run somebody against them. But if they're not, go run somebody against them. We got to make those people feel the heat. These people that are doing everything the opposite of what freedom and liberty in the United States requires. You got to do something. So, but anyways, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I love you guys to death, and I will. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks so much, Josh. Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.
God bless.
Okay, so we got kind of turned around a little bit when we didn't go first with Angela, and we had a lot to hash out with Josh. So unfortunately, we kind of overwent our time from when Diego was going to jump on. So we're going to be moving on. Jacob, I think we're going to introduce our next guest if he's here.
Yeah, he's here. It's if you want to invite him up, it's John Thomas for U.S. Senate is his handle there. I see him in the audience. But yeah, John.
I see him. Yeah.
So while you're getting him up there, I'll just introduce him a little bit. So I've actually known John a while because he's in my home state of Pennsylvania, and we have spent many a convention just hanging out in the hotel lobbies and talking religion and politics and all sorts of fun topics. And it just worked out last year that we decided to volunteer him to run for U.S. Senate. He did a fantastic job. He actually, I think by like 2.5 times covered the spread between the margin of victory between the here Casey and McCormick here in PA. So, John, how are you doing tonight, brother? Thanks for being with us.
I'm doing great, and we still don't have anybody who conceded this race yet. So, and it's within the margin of error or margin of victory where there is a mandatory recount. So they may do a recount and find like 3.5 million votes for me. I don't know.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
I'm telling you, there's a chance.
Oh boy!
But no, it's great. Yeah, and I really do. I really do appreciate those times at convention whenever we have our theological caucus in the hallways of wherever we're meeting at. That is always my favorite time at convention. But yeah, this year was, I think it was during one of those theological caucuses that we were having that I was asked, will you run for U.S. Senate? And I was like,
oh, I remember Reese was telling me, he was like, I'm going to make John run for Senate. And I was like, I can't condone forcing him, but I won't stop you.
Yeah, so my first response was like, this nomination is today, and this isn't something you do without asking your wife. So everyone's like, well, you have a phone. She has a phone. See if you can ask her. So I asked my wife, who is listening in right now. So I'm actually at the other end of the state. She's on the western end of Pennsylvania. I'm on the eastern end of Pennsylvania right now. She gave me permission to run. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'll do it. But it's been a great run. I think that the fact right now it's about 30,000 votes separating Casey and McCormick. McCormick is the Republican candidate. He was declared the winner according to the Associated Press. He's right now about 30,000 votes ahead of Casey, and I got just shy of 90,000 votes. So it's almost 3 times that spread between the two candidates. And I think that does give us some political capital. And as Josh was saying in his race, it was an uncontested race. And because he ran in that race, it forced that Democrat to run a 9-month campaign instead of just a 3-month campaign up until the primary. And I think that is something that gives us as a Libertarian Party a lot of capital, a lot of material that we can use with the Democrats and Republicans. In a previous race I ran for local school board, I got almost a third, almost 30% of the vote. And again, it was one of those races where whoever wins the primary is going to win the race. It's largely, that's how it goes. But because it was a pick two race, there were two people who won both the Democrat and Republican primaries. And because, and we ran two Libertarians in, and we both ended up getting close to 30% of the vote. And we forced them to run a 9-month campaign instead of a 3-month campaign. So what did that do for us? What it did for us was a couple months later, we had a PA House opening in our district. And I was able to write an op-ed in the paper. And I rarely disagree with Josh Smith, but I'm going to give an example of when you don't run somebody in an uncontested race. I was able to write an op-ed in the paper saying, if the Republican nominee endorses Defend the Guard, we will not run somebody against him, because that was going to be an uncontested race. So the Republican nominees at that point had an option. They could either endorse Defend the Guard and have a sail right into victory in November, or they could continue to back the big war machine and have to fight for that seat right up until November. There were, I think, 5 Republicans running. 4 of them reached out to me saying that they would endorse Defend the Guard, including the guy who won, who ended up coasting into victory because there's no Libertarian running against him. So that is something that we can do. And that's those coalitions that we can build, where we can use the capital that we build up as a Libertarian Party to actually influence policy that moves forward.
I think that's awesome. John, this was your first time running like a statewide campaign. I know you've run local before. What was that experience like? And do you have any like notable conversations you had with people, whether it was about the Libertarian Party and message, or if it was about, sharing your faith and how those, connects to your Libertarian, views. I know we talked a little bit about this when I had you on my show back before the election, but you had been like a whole, 3 weeks since then. So I'm sure maybe more happened between, last time we talked and now.
Well, it seems like it seems like the last 3 weeks were like 3 years. It seems like it's been a while since we talked. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience running for a statewide race. After I ran, the last race I ran for was school board, and then I go from running for school board to running for United States Senate. That's quite a jump. And I happened to tell Sam Robb, who's active with the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus, that I was exhausted after that school board run. He said, "You know what? You might find it easier to run a statewide race than a local race." And I thought he was nuts, but it actually turned out to be true, because yes, there's a lot more travel. Yes, there's a lot more being away from home, but I also had a lot of volunteers. Whenever you're running for a local race, you almost have to do everything yourself. But on a statewide race, you have a bigger pool of people who are there to help you and to support you, and to even just giving you encouragement along the way. That made a huge difference for me, and it made me be able to enjoy the aspect of running for office that I liked, which is connecting with people. And I lead off with being a Christian, and a lot of Josh was kind of mentioning this. A lot of libertarians, especially the left libertarians, will say stuff like, "Well, if you're a Christian and you're a libertarian, that makes you a Republican." And it's like, no, that does not make me a Republican. The fact that I am a Christian and I believe that man should not initiate aggression against other people, that makes me a libertarian. And the fact that I can ground that in Scripture makes me a Christian libertarian. So I did experience that sort of pushback. I also experienced pushback from a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters, because they still associate libertarianism with the platform of the Libertarian Party for much of the Libertarian Party's existence, which did include a pro-abortion plank. And they're like, how can you be a libertarian whenever they're all pro-abortion? And I have to explain to them, well, we're not all pro-abortion here. Yeah, you have me, who's definitely running to the right of the Republican candidate for Senate on the abortion issue. Dave McCormick in the debate said that he thinks it ought to be a state issue, which I agree with, because murder is a state issue, and I think that that God does ordain governments, and he ordained the state government to deal with murder. So I agreed with him that far, but he said he thinks it should be a state issue, and he's happy with Pennsylvania's current abortion law, which really allows abortion on demand up through the first 2 trimesters. So I was like, this guy is not pro-life, but many of my Christian brothers and sisters who chastise me for running in a party that used to be pro-choice were fine with supporting Dave McCormick because he had an R next to his name. So that is something that I think that it's unfortunate with so many Christians, especially evangelical Christians, just automatically assume that the Republican candidate is the candidate that's going to put forth Christian values. But that's I ran a campaign focused on educating people. It wasn't I wasn't one of those people who would stand up at convention and say, we're going to win this statewide race, rah, rah, rah. No, I'm not going to stand up there and lie to people. If somebody says that to you, either they're lying to you or they're an idiot. And that either of those things should disqualify that person from office. If somebody's saying that they're going to win a statewide race as a libertarian, it's one of those two things. And that should disqualify the person. I like to be honest. And I even went on statewide television here in Pennsylvania and said, I said, I am not running to win, but I still want you to vote for me. And I made a case for why people ought to vote for somebody, even if that person is not going to win. And I did. I got, like I said, almost 90,000 votes now. And we secured minor party status in Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, we had 4 statewide candidates running in Pennsylvania. And well, we had 5 statewide candidates if you include the presidential candidate. Of the 5, there was only 1 candidate who did not secure us minor party status, and that was the presidential candidate. So at convention, whenever they said, we have to have a presidential candidate because that's the only way to secure minor party status, I don't know how the other states' rules are written, but here in Pennsylvania, it was the presidential candidate was the only candidate that did not get it for us.
Yeah, no, I know what's funny is I think, it's hard not to look at the disparity between how Chase performed and how our statewide candidates performed and think that, Trump's appeal to libertarians had at least something to do with that, which our lady chair is here now, so we'll be talking to her about that in a bit. John, I wanted to ask you one more quick question before we talk to Angela, but you're welcome to stay up here, John, and interact with the rest of us as well for the remainder of the stream. But one of the things that you talked to me about on my show, which I wanted to give you a moment just to share here briefly with everyone, because you brought up how, yes, a lot of people of our ilk, Christian conservatives, who maybe, lean libertarian, but, libertarians are pro-choice. And we, obviously here at the Christian Caucus and our friends at the Pro-Life Caucus are doing work to change that, that sort of misconception that people have. But I think the drug war is something that comes up a lot as well. And you gave a really good answer on my show about people, Christians and conservatives who are concerned about, shouldn't the government be there to stop people from using substances that are bad for them and to stop them from, committing sin? Do you want to maybe touch on that, quickly in terms of the answers that you would give to people while you were out campaigning?
Yeah, I look at the in Romans 13 where the Apostle Paul gives the basic outline of what good governance is, and he says that governments are instituted for your good. And the "your" there is a specific audience. He's writing to the Roman Christians. So he's saying governments are instituted for your good, Christian. So then you have to ask us, well, what can the government do that's for my good? And if you ask, well, can the government keep me from committing personal sins? Well, maybe, but that's not real. That's the Holy Spirit's job. And if you're saying that I want the government to replace the Holy Spirit, perhaps you lack faith in the power of the Holy Spirit. So if I need the government to, I am, as a born again Christian, if I need the government to stop me from going to a prostitute, I don't have a lot of Holy Spirit power in me, because it ought to be the Holy Spirit that's stopping me from doing that. If I need the government to stop me from doing a line of cocaine, then I consider the Holy Spirit too weak at that point. So it's not that in Romans 13, it's not saying that you need the government to do the Holy Spirit's job for you, but the government is there instituted for your good. And what is the good that Christians do? Well, the good things that Christians do are to love their neighbors and love God. So how can the government help with that? Well, the government can help by not allowing people to steal from you, because if my entire paycheck is going to somebody robbing from me, then that makes it hard for me to love my neighbor. Like I'm not going to be able to invite him over to dinner because I'm not going to have dinner because I don't have any money because it's all stolen. So if somebody's going to kill me, then that makes it hard to worship God, at least in this mortal coil. So government can exist to do those very limited things, which is to prevent acts of aggression against other people. But beyond that, if the government's doing more than preventing the initiation of aggression, then you have a government who's trying to step in and do what the Holy Spirit's supposed to be doing for Christians. And if somebody doesn't have the Holy Spirit, they don't need the government to come in. They need Christ to come in. So if we're saying we're forcing people to accept the government, then we're asking them to accept a false god.
I think that's really well said, John. And because as a libertarian, I don't believe in intellectual property, I'm going to steal that answer and just present it as my own going forward. But just kidding.
I approve.
So like I said, John, you're welcome to stay up here and participate as well. Angela got here a little bit late, but we're glad she's with us here now. Kara, I didn't know if you wanted to do any housekeeping quick before I bring Angela in and start giving her questions.
Yeah, thanks. So my daughter just started gymnastics, so I'm running in and out of there. So I'm letting Jacob kind of take over the leading of the space. The other thing I want to say, now that we have kind of multiple speakers, and I want to make sure our main speakers don't get kind of drowned out when they want to participate, especially now that we have Angela up here. You guys can be sure to use the raise the hand if you don't feel comfortable just jumping in at any time, and then that way we can make sure we get to you. But other than that, I'll let Jacob go ahead and take back over. Thanks, Jacob. And thanks, Angela, for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for being here. I know, you are a very self-sacrificial person, and I feel like you're taking it too far, because you're always, whether it's mental abuse or now apparently physical abuse, you're always undergoing something in your life to cause pain while you try to do well. But you are an overcomer of adversity. You're our MVP of the Liberty movement for this year, I think. Right up there with, I mean, you and Dave in your own spheres have done a lot to put libertarians on the map. It's quite a amazing time to. I mean, I don't remember libertarianism being this exciting since the Ron Paul days. So, do you want to just talk about like just what the last year has been like, and just like maybe how I'm sure it's very surreal to be where you're at now. With Trump
Yeah.
being elected and the Libertarian Party and your actions having having a major impact in the campaign he ran.
It is really surreal. The last year has been really nuts. It started with about a year ago, maybe a little more, Rick Grinnell reaching out to me to find out, what libertarians thought of Donald Trump. And I think that a lot of libertarians don't know who Rick Grinnell is. He was an interim director of national intelligence. He and Kash Patel fired like 15% of the intelligence agency staff, which is really cool, and he sort of spearheaded the effort to do outreach to libertarians. And so I had a meeting with him in person after a phone call, and then that led to a phone call from Donald Trump, and flying down to Mar-a-Lago and meeting with him. And I've had a lot of people say, that's awesome that you advocated for Ross, but why not this? Why not that? I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to make it something that is like an easy win for Donald Trump, something that is going to make him feel really good about doing it, something that's going to have like a maximum positive impact, and something we can all cheer. So, my bargaining chip, which is a really crazy thing to say because I don't like to think like I'm bargaining with someone's life, but I'm like, if you come speak at our convention, will you free Ross Ulbricht? And he was just like, yes, I love freeing people. I want to do that. I love freeing people, which I thought was just like such a cool response. And the rest is history, and we're still waiting to see what happens, but it's been a heck of a roller coaster. A lot of people really love what I do. A lot of people really hate it. I get death threats. I get, like a lot of crazy behavior. And I think most of it's from people who are like terminally online, and they're, the chance of them doing something dangerous or violent to me is probably pretty slim. But I'm 100% here for it, man. Like, we're making an impact. And I know that people are not super stoked about the first cabinet picks that Donald Trump has made. Reminder, he's running a Republican campaign. He's not running a libertarian campaign. We just have a seat at the table. But I have reached out and actually like given my opinion and references. I do it respectfully. I'm just like, for what it's worth, this is how libertarians view it. Like we're concerned about regime change, and we don't want to see someone who has the same strategy as Hillary Clinton when it comes to foreign policy. We get it's not going to be someone super libertarian, but having someone who's anti-regime change would be like really great to keep that trajectory. And the fact that I'm able to do that is just like totally blows my mind. So, we have more influence at the federal level than we've ever had. And I'm really proud of that. I want to continue this trajectory, and I hope whoever comes after me continues that. I'm definitely going to be working to mentor and have strong successorship with the next chair of the National Libertarian Party, whoever that is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The Bible says that the path is narrow, and I think that applies to what you've managed to pull off, because I do think there's a difficulty, even for those of us who I think are on your side. I imagine, and I've had you on my show to talk about this a little bit, that you want to be in a position where you're respectful, where you're building relationships, but where you're not, failing to bring up important points related to what you believe, what libertarians believe, and to make those persuasively, and to, make sure that you differentiate yourselves from the Republicans. I know you had to, for example, you shared this when you were on my show, that at the Rescue the Republic rally, that you requested they would not do the Pledge of Allegiance, which people found to be strange, but you stuck to your principles. How do you navigate that difficulty? What do you recommend for libertarians when it comes to, how do you coalition with people effectively while maintaining libertarian principles, but not like, I don't know, bashing people over the head with. I mean, you know what's funny? When Josh was on, he was talking about how it's hard to like. There was for the longest time in the liberty movement, people kind of look down on Christianity because there's that meme of like Christians are just Bible thumpers. Well, libertarians do that, right? There's not like a libertarian Bible, but they'll just like, you're not libertarian, so we're just going to bash you with libertarian tropes and hate you and call you a statist. And yay, we're advancing liberty
I mean,
somehow.
I'd say the libertarian Bible is man, economy, and state, but there would be people who say the libertarian Bible is some other book. It's like you just have to really use good judgment. I try to like take the King Solomon approach, just pray for wisdom. Like don't pray even for success and just like, oh, like God, please give me like the judgment and discernment to make the right call in this difficult situation. You want to maximize your impact when you're talking to people in positions of authority and people who have political power. So you don't want to sprinkle your libertarian principles all over everything. You want to recognize where they're open to, hearing your point of view, and also where your point of view is going to strengthen their position, maybe where they need backup. So, going really hard on abolishing the Department of Education is just so easy. They want to do that too. And so, hey, I can help you. By the way, I also think you should pardon Julian Assange. And we really appreciate that you didn't start any new wars. If you could even start bringing troops home next term, that would be awesome too. And just try to push in the right direction. But as far as like all the firepower, I mean, I pick that battle really carefully, and then I just try to have positive influence elsewhere. And the thing that libertarians are just like so bad at is playing the long game. We're just like, oh my gosh, 2%, the next, oh, it's so exciting. It's not exciting to get 2% in a presidential election cycle. So you don't have to like, I just feel like we shouldn't worry about that as much. And we should worry about like playing a long game and also maximizing our impact. So, what if we were to abolish, assist in the abolition of one federal agency every election cycle? I mean, that to me is incredible. And I'm not saying we shouldn't run a presidential candidate. I think we should, but like I'm seeing, what we can actually accomplish now. And like I want to lean into our wins, and make everything else like a further down the line kind of plan.
Yeah, no, I think that's those points are well taken. Picking your battles and speaking. I think you do a good job at approaching complex topics with with intelligence, but also gentleness. Libertarians aren't always good at the gentle part. I also agree with your point about taking the long view. And I think that's, you brought up like, hey, what if we just make slow, like, one government agency, one little concession at a time? And yeah, that's a slow burn, but also like moving the Overton window is a slow process as well. And kind of like I said when I brought you in, I mean, I don't know how people even if we're not happy with the appointment, and even if, the policy stuff over the next 4 years isn't as good as we might hope it to be, just that like Ron Paul was trending for a good bit with Elon Musk and the
Yes.
Fed was trending. I mean, like, we need these ideas to be pushed into the Overton window. And if the Libertarian Party isn't like, acting to make that happen, then I don't know what our purpose is.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree.
I want to open it up to, the other hosts and speakers here. If you guys have questions for Angela, it doesn't have to just be me. Although if no one raises their hand or asks anything, I'll keep going. But I can hog the mic, but I can also share it.
I had one thing I wanted to say just in response to kind of when I was listening to Angela speak just now. I feel like libertarians aren't really known for our open arms and, great lines of communication with people that might even differ on one tiny little libertarian topic than us. And what I think that we all could learn from how Angela even just described her approach with Trump and getting things that we want, it's just like that, you get more flies with honey than vinegar. She's actually getting
Yeah.
stuff out of him. And the way she did it wasn't by calling him a dirty statist socialist. She did it by saying, hey, we really liked when you did this. And you know what else would be really cool is if you did this. And I think that that's like a hard lesson for us as libertarians. It's just, even to other libertarians. And I'd like to see us start embracing that style of communication and influencing people, whether it's within the party or without. And I think that was a really important, communication style that you demonstrated and just brought up.
Thanks. We have to learn to have humility. And I think we're really frustrated anytime somebody says be humble. It's like, like, I don't want to be humble. It's my moment. You guys have been wrong this whole time. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It's like, I know, but when people are wrong and like grand in their wrongness, I don't know how to put it, and they fall on their face so hard, it's just so much easier for them to accept help when you do it with humility and a little bit of gentleness. And also it's like, don't be annoying. Like, we're so bad at that. We're so annoying. And so I've just tried really hard to be less annoying to the people who I want to influence. To the people who really dislike me, I'm happy to be annoying to them. But the good people out there, I don't want to annoy them.
Right. I mean, there's some people that aren't open to us either. So that's a little bit of a different story.
Yes.
I love what you've done and what you're doing. It's just awesome. And I even think that's a little bit of what Colorado was doing with their pledge. And I just had a meeting yesterday in San Diego with some local Christians who are like kind of local influencers, like followers as much as like 100,000 or so on Instagram. And we're talking about, I brought the pledge. I had called Hannah before this meeting, and based off of like what you're doing at the national level and like what they've done at the state level, I feel like other small groups can do that at a very local level. Like, we can cudgel these people, like get concessions from them, say like, hey, this is what we'd like, otherwise we're gonna like find someone to run against you. We're just gonna make it hard, and like, so you might lose in a primary, you might whatever. So I just think that like this could trickle down, this strategy, and it could be at like every level. So I think
Absolutely.
it's pretty cool.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania is going to have a really good opportunity to come to the bargaining table with the GOP and start making some deals and carving some spots out for themselves because of that margin. They own the win margin. And Trump and Chase, like, it's very interesting. I told Donald Trump, I was like, I can't endorse you. I can't like give you the nomination, but I can tell you what to do to win libertarian votes. And I think he really did that. And it's evident in Bucks County, because the Bucks County margin was really like, I think that was one of the critical things for winning PA. It was his appeal to libertarians, mostly small L libertarians, but that's what pushed him over the edge in PA. And John and a lot of the other guys, they got a much stronger vote turnout. I think it kind of tells you exactly like who are the diehard libertarians in Pennsylvania. It's a pretty good chunk. It's a deciding factor for a lot of races. And what's the bare minimum like that you could do as a libertarian? And I think that Chase's vote tells you that. Like if you run a bad campaign, you're still going to get like 0.4% of the vote outcome. So it was really interesting data that came out of that.
What I know that you talked about this in a post, but since you're in front of an audience here, I thought I'd give you a chance to share it quick too. There's a lot of accusations that Chase did poorly, not by any fault of his own, but just that the National Party just would not do anything to help him. Which I was immediately going, well, hold on, it's your job to run a campaign, not the party's job. But then you shared a comment about all the things that you tried to do to help the campaign that they essentially turned down. Do you want to share a little bit about that, and then maybe talk about like maybe some of the lessons that we should learn as a party about what Chase did wrong that future candidates need to perhaps do differently?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I wanted Chase's campaign to be wildly successful. I saw right away that it was not going to pull from regular libertarians. I think we should call them regular libertarians as opposed to right-wing libertarians. I think the only people that it appealed to were woke libertarians, beltway people, and low information voters. And those people are, low information voters are always going to exist. That's fine. But, I said, if you want to appeal more to just your libertarian base, like these are the shows you can go on. I can make, connections with X, Y, and Z people. And this is mostly with his campaign team. And to their credit, some of them worked like pretty closely and cheerfully with me. So it's not like everybody in his campaign was terrible or hostile to me. That's definitely not the case. I said to his campaign manager, what Chase really needs is a moment of moral courage. This election is about moral courage. Donald Trump has had an assassination attempt on his life. It was one at that time. It was like he needs to go to an event and disrupt someone else's campaign event, Jose Vegas style. You need a viral moment of him speaking out courageously, especially on anti-war. He should be competing with Jill Stein, right? We have more ballot access states than she does. He should be beating her, and that was not the case. Man, it's tough. I said, I reached out to donors, and most of the donors would not pick up the phone, or they said no. Some donors said, this is the first time I'm ever in my adult life not voting for the libertarian candidate. And I mean major donors, people who are willing to max out at his campaign level and maybe max out to the state party. If I'd said, hey, I'll spend it on Chase, will you max out to us? But the answer was no. I gave him our Freedom Fest breakout session. I had a main stage thing with Kash Patel and Brett Weinstein and Clint Russell, but the breakout session I just gifted to them. And obviously I let them put their material at our tables. I ran some ads for them, kind of covert. As in not through, the actual party apparatus. I had staff put together memes and, graphics for them because they didn't have a lot of that. I pulled, I requested and pulled photographs and branding and stuff for them so that I could get it to our team and to state affiliates and to volunteers. I met with them at least 3 times. I was trying to meet with them like every other week, and eventually it just sort of like ran out of steam and things to discuss and go over. I made our Twitter account post Chase stuff over and over again. The posting will continue until morale improves. And, they mostly got ratioed. I didn't talk about him a lot from my Twitter account because almost every tweet was just getting ratioed. Like it's not helpful to talk about someone and they get trashed. So for those of you who are just like not understanding strategy at all, that is why. There were more things. We held a fundraiser for him. I donated $200, towards it. Not a lot of his own guys showed up. A couple of people did. Heidi, the Louisiana LP chair, she showed up. There were just a few. Mike Termott showed up, to his credit. I did invite him to speak at Rage Against the War Machine, and I did kind of go back and forth over that and was like, man, is this the right thing to do? I don't know. At a certain point, I was like, well, I think I need to get over myself and invite him. And I did. And I think I heard this secondhand. I didn't hear this straight from his mouth. But I think that his campaign manager did not want him on stage with people from the LaRouche movement because they didn't want to look like quote unquote weirdos. So that happened. I did not invite him to speak at Rescue the Republic because it was a unity event. And I know that he's not into that. I did invite Mike Termott to the event, though, and he sat in the VIP section in the front, and he was a gem about it. There's more, but that's everything I can think of off the top of my head. There was more I wanted to do, but you gotta work with me on it. I offered to go into a joint fundraising committee with them, but they said that's illegal or it doesn't exist or they didn't know what it was. And I don't know, man. I figured it out. It's Googleable.
Just do a Cenk Uygur impression. Just Google it.
I mean, like, really, but the thing is with a joint fundraising committee, the juice is not worth the squeeze unless you have people who are willing to max out at $40,000, $50,000. Like, you have to be able to max out at a high level in order for it to be worth it. And I don't think that was there. And also, like, you're right. I don't run his campaign, and we got a lot of hate mail. We got a lot of hate mail over the Chase campaign. We had a lot of cancellations in very rapid succession. And yeah, people have canceled because they don't like my leadership. People cancel. Dude, I can't tell you how many people I've had cancel because we won't speak out about seatbelt laws and little weird French things like that, Like, people are going to do what they're going to do, but the number of cancellations since he got the nomination was huge. And what I have to tell people is, like, we're still doing incredible work. Like, look at the work we're doing to make the Trump campaign better and just to actually advance libertarian policy. I don't run his campaign. Like, that's not my role. And the best I can do is offer advice. And I think that people who are not involved in party politics, which is most people, probably think that the party does run the presidential campaign, but just nothing could be further from the truth. We're two totally different organizations.
Right. I wanted to give Albert from the Pro-Life Caucus a chance to ask you questions, Angela. Albert, did you have anything?
Well, I think this discussion's great, and I think you covered a lot of ground, and I think you kind of stole some of my thunder, some stuff I wanted to ask. So, not to keep this going, I will decline to ask any other questions.
Well, dang.
I guess I can, unless Kara has anything. The other question I wanted to ask for you, Angela, because I think we're getting close to, bringing things to a wind down here. What would you say to the people who are generally supportive and like what they're seeing, but are, like, when Josh was on earlier, he expressed concern, which honestly I share a little bit of that. Can we keep this going? Because there are some people who don't like the culture change in the party, that don't like the strategy change in the party. So, and obviously, like, we here at the Christian Caucus and I can't speak for the Pro-Life Caucus, but I tend to think that they would agree that we do like the changes that we see in the culture and the changes and the shift in strategy. So, what would you encourage people to do to help continue this moving forward? Maybe in a general sense, but also, like, are there any specific things coming up that we should, be looking forward to now that we're kind of, getting out of presidential season?
Yes. The first thing I'd say is thank you. thank you to everyone who has been a supporter, people who have been ride or die, or you were maybe a little bit skeptical and you hung on. Like your support is what makes this possible. I can't do this in a vacuum for everybody who elected and then re-elected me. Like you guys made this possible. And I can't like understate your contribution. Any little bit of influence I have at the federal level, maybe we get a neocon, kind of a war hawk in the State Department, in defense, but maybe I can have just a little bit of influence. It makes a world of difference to the handful of people's lives we might be able to save. So that is a group effort. We need to do outreach to the Kennedy people, and we need to get them to join the party. A lot of those people are very libertarian. They are medical freedom and food freedom people. They are happy to support the coalition effort, just like we were, but they're not GOP people. They're not, even ride or die Donald Trump. And I think that they have a much better home in the Libertarian Party. They're not all ex-Democrats either. I think a lot of them are just sort of populists, people who supported a mix of Bernie Sanders, Ron Paul, Donald Trump, and, Gary Johnson. Like it's kind of all over. And so we need to bring those people home to the LP. And I think that we need to be a lot more welcoming with our membership while being discerning with our leadership. There is a place for the party to be a big tent, and that's with people who vote for us, and then a slightly smaller tent is our members, and then a smaller tent are our leaders. But we do want to expand our membership. I think that's the way to do it. And I think that we need to not purity test everyone to death when we're trying to get $25 from them a year and have them show up to a couple of events. And I think we need to be mindful of burnout and don't burn your best people out. Scale back your county affiliate a little bit if it means that you will prolong it. Longevity is more important than just like blowing up and burning out over an 18-month period. If we can do all of that, I think that we will hold on to the party. And I think that we are right now in a position to grow incredibly.
Thank you for that answer, Angela. That was really good. One last question. What can we do to advance liberty over the next 4 years? Because obviously, we've talked about the ways that we can influence the current president-elect in his upcoming administration, and we've talked about presidential campaigns, but we won't have another one of those for 4 years. So, other than trying to grow the party, what are some ways we can tangibly try to increase liberty? This might be a good time to bring up. I know Libertarian parties recently adopted Project Decentralized Revolution,
Yep.
so that's probably one thing to point people to. Is there anything else? And if you want to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that there is a real appetite with the America First crowd, to have peaceful foreign policy. So I highly encourage people to advance Defend the Guard. Amy Lepore has been really fantastic. So has Diego Rivera at putting together phone banking efforts for that, contacting state governments. We should be pushing that. We should also be networking with state GOPs about it as well and trying to get some support. And if the guys who you're contacting feel that they don't have the political capital to do it, find out why. Keep digging. I feel like we will make a phone call and like hit a wall and then we're like, oh, that's it. It's like, no. Find out like, hey, who are your supporters that I need to talk to in order to make you feel comfortable voting for this bill? And, say like, I want to have a sit down with them. Like, I want to like take care of them. I want to send them some, 3-minute slide deck or something, or testimony from a veteran. I think there's a lot that we can do that will also help us practice and become better advocates for liberty. And I mean, certainly continue to do your work at the local level. Do what you can, work smarter, not necessarily harder, and just network, network. Please also keep advocating on social media against neocons. There are there are things that I kind of feel like I have to pull my punches a little bit, right? Because I have a different relationship now with President Trump and his senior advisors, his chief of staff, actually, people who might have cabinet positions. But you guys need to keep the pressure up, like I don't want to see Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. I'm not excited about that. We're not going to get 100%. That was never promised to us. So, people who are like, I told you so, he lied. I'm like, no, he never said he was going to make it 100% libertarian administration. But go ahead, like let your voice be heard, because it does matter. We do have influence now at the federal level. And that's a huge white pill. And I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, that's all really good. Thank you, Angela, for being here. I think I'm going to hand things over to Kara here to kind of close us out. If you're there, Kara.
I'm here. Yeah. Thanks, Jacob.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Angela, for all that insight and information and guidance for how we're going to go forward. I think that was really good for people to hear and think about all those things. And we definitely have some wins. Our wins aren't perfect, but they're definitely wins, and they're amazing, incredible, and unexpected wins. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Albert, did you want to ask Angela something before she goes?
No, just wanted to kind of wrap up with what you mentioned, the wins, especially on the pro-life side.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to transition to you next.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, Angela, you're welcome to stick around. We're going to delve into the pro-life topic, or if you have to go, I know you're really busy. That's fine too. So thanks for coming. The next thing we were going to talk to Albert about and let him kind of take over and talk about, if anybody else wants to talk to him about, is basically the pro-life issue this election cycle. Because there's two main things that I was hoping we could get to. One was that there was a huge win in Florida. And then two was how the Democrats really chose to make that their only really thing that they were campaigning on, for their presidential race. And I was just kind of wondering Albert's thoughts on that, how that impacted things, and a little bit about his thoughts with that being their main campaign strategy. And then anything else he has to say, really. But those were two things that I was hoping he would get to. So go ahead, Albert, and take the floor.
Okay. Yeah, I think on balance, the pro-life cause fared quite well on election day. But first, I'd like to go over the bad news, and then I'll transition to the good news. I think the worst news of the night was in the state of Missouri, where 52% of the voters amended the state constitution to guarantee the right to an abortion until fetal viability, with exceptions after that if the pregnant woman's life or physical or mental health were at risk. Now, this reversed a near total ban on abortion in Missouri. So that was clearly a loss. In the category of other bad news, I think the second prize goes to Arizona, where 62% of the voters established a fundamental right to abortion in the Constitution, also overturning a 15-week ban. I think in the category of lesser bad news, you have a number of states like Colorado, Montana, Maryland, New York, and Nevada that, and those states voted to amend their state constitution, enshrining the right to an abortion. But practically, this really didn't change anything in those states, because those states already legalized, most abortions. So transitioning to what was good news, South Dakota voters rejected a proposed amendment to the state constitution that would have guaranteed the right to an abortion in the first trimester. And that vote was overwhelmingly pro-life. It was like 60%. So that's really good news. And another good news item was Nebraska, because the voters there defeated an abortion rights amendment by 51%. And they approved an amendment to the Constitution, because there were two proposals there. They approved an amendment to the Constitution banning abortion in the second and third trimesters by 55% of the vote. And abortion there is currently prohibited beyond 12 weeks of pregnancy. So that was the good news. And then the final good news was Florida, which retains now its 6-week ban on abortion because of the failure of the voters to pass a constitutional amendment to allow it. And so that vote fell short by 57%. And I think kudos goes to Governor DeSantis of Florida, because he used his political capital and was politically courageous to oppose that amendment. Whereas I think many other Republicans on the abortion issue just hide under the cover and they don't want to even address it. But so on that issue, Governor DeSantis was really active. So I think that was great. And but you see, all these good news items that I mentioned would probably have been nullified by Kamala Harris' victory, because she was on the record to eliminate the filibuster. And if she had gotten her 51 seats in the Senate, I'm sure that's the path that the Democrats would take. And they wanted to expand the Supreme Court, some really radical proposals. And they wanted to legislate Roe versus Wade, as the law of the land. And that's something that Chase Oliver was totally in favor of, because he also stated that he would impose Roe versus Wade onto the states. And so compared to them, I mean, Trump's position was very, very reasonable, because he wanted the states to decide. Even though, I mean, the only true pro-life candidate out there was Randall Terry, the Constitution Party. But I mean, Trump's position was a whole lot more palatable to us, and at least the citizens of the states get to decide this issue in a constitutional way. So on balance, I think Trump's victory will keep abortion at the state level, which is good for the pro-life cause, but because it allows us to keep organizing at the grassroots and really fight another day at the state and local levels and convince voters of the essential humanity of the unborn. And I think this election is also a vindication for pro-life libertarians who believe that the libertarian nominee who was in favor of abortion until birth, and also his advocacy of allowing child transgenderism, that would be a disaster. And I think it's instructive that, despite being on 47 state ballots, Chase got less votes than Robert F. Kennedy, who was only on 31 state ballots and who withdrew from the race. So I think we can do better, but we need the right candidate to do better. A candidate who will unify libertarians and who won't take, radical positions on the social left. So those are kind of my comments about the election. So I'd like to open it up to any questions.
So this isn't really a question, but I just want to reiterate something you mentioned has been on my mind. The election of Trump and all the things that we're seeing, his rhetoric is not perfect, but the difference between him and Kamala Harris is it does give us the opportunity to fight, to keep fighting to save babies. And we probably would have lost that with Kamala. At least it would have been a lot harder. And I'd rather have someone who is open to us saving babies than closed off to that. So that's the one win from the pro-life perspective, that where this, I think, mattered a lot. And I know not all libertarians agree on that topic, but we here do. So that was a big one for me in the end. Just wanted to reiterate, like, that was one of the biggest things. And no matter what else happens with all the other appointments, that's a win.
Yeah, definitely.
Jamie, I guess it's a comment, which I might be able to morph to a quick question too. But I'm wondering what your calculus is when it comes to voting, because this was a weird election for me where I really had to think about, like, what are my first principles when it comes to how I vote, and if I'm going to talk to my audience or to my friends or family and kind of give them, like, what do I think the Christian libertarian view on voting should be, and like how do you make those calculations. It's tough because I think we, as libertarians, it's easy just to fall into slogans, right? Like it's the most important election of our lifetime, and it's always vote for the lesser of two evils. But at the same time, I don't even think necessarily that uh, like those might be true a lot. I don't know that they're always true, and yeah, like I think in general, I'm inclined to vote for the libertarian, but voting for libertarian is kind of more of a protest vote. And if it's going to be a protest vote, it needs to send a clear message. So, I mean, if someone asked you, like, how do you, as a pro-life Christian and libertarian, how do you approach voting, and like, how do you weigh sort of the balance between, like, what if this election had someone with a really good message that could have constituted a really good protest vote, and you had to weigh that against, yeah, but this election isn't like most, where I think there actually might be one of the major party candidates is a lot less bad than the other candidate and might be better for the unborn or be better for war. Like, these are really tough things to consider and balance. So I guess I'm kind of curious, like, um, how you approach that and what you recommend to people.
Yeah, I thought about that a whole lot because this was the first election in a long time when I did not have a clear-cut choice until quite late in the game. But basically, the conclusion I came to was, and the pro-life issue is obviously the most important issue for me. And I just didn't want to kind of give it up, especially because I was really disappointed in Trump when he basically forced the GOP to basically abandon its pro-life position at the convention. So they removed the pro-life plank that had been in existence for a very long time in the GOP. And so I wanted to kind of register a protest vote on that. However, I understand the lesser of the two evils argument, and that Kamala Harris would have been disastrous for the country and for the pro-life cause. So what I was advising people is if they live in a swing state like Pennsylvania or Michigan, that they should hold their nose and vote for Trump, because I definitely prefer Trump as president than Kamala Harris. However, for those who live in a solid blue state like Illinois or a solid red state like Florida, I would have advised them, well, vote your conscience. And to me, voting my conscience in this election was Randall Terry of the Constitution Party, who has a real good track record of being a pro-life activist. And the Constitution Party is not that different in terms of first principles than the Libertarian Party, especially because they believe in a strict interpretation of the Constitution at the federal level. So in that sense, they're already quite close to libertarianism. So that was my calculus.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I actually have like a ton of questions I could ask you just about pro-life libertarianism and libertarian party in general, but this might be best to save for another space because they're not necessarily about the election, and we're definitely going to plan on doing more of these in the future as often as we can. I don't know if Kara or Jessica or any of the other, actually, I think we're the only speakers left, if they have anything else they wanted to ask or get to.
Yeah, I'd be really happy, Jacob, to talk to you in another setting on, further on these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. I wonder, and I mean, I'll give you a sneak preview. Like, I don't think we should get into it here just for sake of time because it's kind of a long discussion. But I wonder, like, what the future of the Libertarian Party should be in relation to the pro-life position. It took a step away from its old plank, which was pretty explicitly pro-choice, and now it's silent. But I don't know. Like, I don't know where I stand in terms of, like, should the Libertarian Party in the future adopt a pro-life plank? And if it does, what should that language look like? Like, that's at least a conversation I think that needs to be had, especially if we want to change the culture of the party long term, and also maybe capitalize on maybe some of the whiffs or failings of the Republican Party. And maybe it also, because I've always wondered, like, why does the Constitution Party exist? Like, they should just come join the Libertarian Party and strengthen the numbers. But I know for a lot of them, it's the pro-life stuff. So there's a lot of calculus there. Like I said, it's something I think we should do a separate spaces discussion on at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Kara, what do you think? Was there anything else we wanted to touch on before we close out? I don't know if Kara can get to the mic right now. She might be in a bad spot. I would end the space, but I'm not a host. So, I mean, I can sit here and keep talking, I guess, until Kara gets back.
Well, is there anyone in the audience that has anything that they would like to say relevant to the topics we've covered tonight? If so, go ahead and request to speak, and we can see about giving you a little bit of time. But while that's happening, if it happens, I just want to say, it's funny that you said, why does the Constitution Party exist? I was having that exact same thought, that we could really merge. Of course, there will be people who won't, because we don't have a pro-life stance as a party. There will, of course, be problems from within the party. So, anybody can choose to move parties anytime they want. But it's funny that you said that. My very first presidential vote was also the Constitution Party. So I have a little bit of place in my heart for that. But it was a calculus this year. Who do you vote for? You got to vote your conscience when it comes down to it. You got to be able to look yourself in the mirror. And if that's libertarian, no matter what, if that's on a particular issue, whatever it is, I know a lot of us struggled with that this year.
Yeah, no, I grew up with a dad who voted Republican because he just always wanted to vote for the lesser of two evils, but he was a registered constitutionalist for a while and he still identifies that way. So I get it. We agree on a lot and have a lot of arguments and stuff, and it's all good. But yeah, I don't know. Albert, I can't see, did anyone raise their hands that they wanted to ask a question or?
Well, I see Jessica has her hand raised, but she just talked.
Oh, it should be down, but
okay. And then
I don't see any others. Do you have any requests to speak?
Yeah, actually, let's see here. There are 3 requests to speak.
Okay, awesome.
So
Yeah, let's bring them up quick, and we'll take 3.
That sounds perfect.
Three questions here to close it out.
Okay, so I will approve. Let's see. Actually, there are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, we'll make it 4. No more.
Let's
No
do
one.
4. No more people.
Okay, I'll approve them all here.
Our immigration policy is 4 per stream.
And let's keep those a little on the quick side if we can, just for time's sake.
All right.
Hello?
Who are we going with first? I don't know the order that they came out. Let's do I'll say Splinters. You're the first up in my queue. So if you want to go ahead and ask a question for the panel.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I am an old, I became libertarian by Ron Paul. So I'm one of those old school guys.
Many such cases.
Yes, exactly. I'm definitely I'm in my upper 40s, and Ron Paul just he solidified it for me. You know what I mean? And I've been that way ever since. So I guess my question is and I listened to Angela earlier, and I thought Angela was amazing this year. This is the first time that I've voted libertarian plenty of times in my life for president and other offices, obviously. And this was the first time in my life that I've whoa, we might actually get some libertarian ideas into office, And I thought Angela did an amazing job at that. And so I guess maybe I want to get your guys' opinion on the cabinet choices right now. And I know that's probably a little bit taboo, you know what I mean? I think our best thing is actually what he just announced was the Doge with Elon Musk and Vivek, and see if they can just like pare down this federal government that's gotten so huge. I'm kind of excited about that. Some of the other appointments, yeah, I'm not super excited, but like we kind of knew that, and I think Angela kind of said that too. It's not really our party. You know what I mean? So we're kind of like hoping that he like kind of appoints some libertarian-minded people, but I'm really excited about this whole Elon and Vivek thing, and if they can like, and Trump goes along with it, and we can just kind of like start paring down this federal government. I'm super excited about it. So I guess my question is, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't been up until like right before the stream when he announced Vivek and Elon for the Department of Government Efficiency, the meme come alive. I was not the happiest, although I was kind of like, well, I guess, maybe my expectations were a little bit too high. I will say, like I made a post before the stream saying that the appointment to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth wasn't super happy with, because I remember him urging Trump to bomb Iran even after he killed their general Soleimani. But and he's definitely like a I don't think he'd use this language, but his general rhetoric with the conflict in Israel and Gaza is like, just there's no difference between Hamas and Palestinians, and the Palestinians are animals, and just go, Israel just needs to finish the job. And, so that's disappointing. Although I guess, again, maybe the expectations shouldn't have been much different. He did endorse Defend the Guard. I have it like several people who I trust, including Liam McCollum, have said that he's a Defend the Guard guy. So, I mean, if we have to have someone who's kind of neo-Connie as Secretary of Defense, if the choice is between a regular neocon and a neocon light who endorses Defend the Guard, well then, yeah, like it's not perfect, but it's not nothing. So I mean, take the little win while we can. The rest of his appointments, they're kind of, they are what they are. I think we maybe, have to, I think we got really excited when he said it wasn't going to be Pompeo or Nikki Haley. And we were like, oh, maybe he's really going to listen to us and put someone really good in. But it's more than likely he's just, he's going to find the least offensive of the bad choices is probably the best we can hope for, I would say.
No, I totally agree with you. And like as you were talking about Pete, I didn't really know anything about him except for Fox, So like I quickly, of course, did a like Google search, and you're taking Wikipedia and you got to take them for their word, And I did see that Iran thing that you just talked about. So I'm like, oh man, he's kind of neo-Connie too. Like what the hell, But the good thing, I mean, like, I'm trying to think positive here. At least he's not like a established politician that's the neocon. You know what I mean? So maybe we got a little hope with that. I'm hoping, but we'll see. But here, the last thing, and I'll let it go on to the next person. But the last thing I'm trying to, the last point I want to make here is that like Trump all of a sudden seems to me like he's trying to be Teddy Roosevelt. Speak softly and carry a big stick. You know what I mean? And like that's what I'm hoping anyways, because from his first administration, he didn't go out and try to start wars and everything, but he did try to have like a strong military, So I'm hoping with these types of appointments, that's still his thought, He's getting guys that, and he actually even said that, and I forgot where it was, that like he has some quote about John Bolton, who is the absolutely worst like neocon there ever was, but he had a quote saying that like it was good to have Bolton there because the people that were like he was negotiating with it knew that he had like neocon behind him that would just like kill him, which is horrible. I don't like that at all. But I kind of see it as that Trump has that whole Teddy Roosevelt thought in his mind, carry a big stick. You know what I mean?
I mean,
And I'm
it's
kind of hoping that's what it is, but we'll see. We'll see.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I've heard people say that, and thanks for coming on, Splinters. I appreciate your comments, and I gave
Yeah.
you a follow. Anyone who has a Spooner quote in their bio deserves a follow. It's my general rule. And
Appreciate that, man.
yeah, Jess and Albert, if you guys want to say anything quick, that's fine too. I was just gonna say that, like, I've heard that argument that like maybe it's, I don't know. To me, it kind of sounds like Trump's doing 4D chess, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, maybe, but it just seems like Trump generally is just flying by the seat of his pants and doesn't always have that much of a plan. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to be optimistic, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Jess and Albert, do you guys have anything?
Yeah, I think on Marco Rubio obviously is a disappointment, but the thing is he's going to have to toe the line of what Trump has been saying, especially on Ukraine, and what JD Vance put out a peace plan for Ukraine, right? So Marco Rubio can't like go off on his own, otherwise he's going to get fired. And Trump is very quick at doing that stuff. And so JD Vance, I thought, had a very reasonable proposal that he laid out on the campaign trail to stop the war in Ukraine. And so I think that's the direction the administration is going. Now, on Israel, you're not going to get the libertarian perspective from this administration because they're 100% Israel. But at least, if you can cut the baby in half, we get part of that. We can agree on the Ukraine issue. I think that's a positive. The other thing is on other more domestic appointments. He did nominate Kristi Noem as the DHS secretary, and I think that's a positive. Even though there's some personal issues with Kristi Noem, but she was the only governor in the country to oppose the COVID lockdowns, and so she was excellent on that issue. So hopefully she'll bring that perspective to her new position, and I hope that he'll also nominate some other good people. I mean, they're talking about Vivek Ramaswamy potentially, as well as education secretary. I think that'll be fantastic. And so we just have to kind of see where the tea leaves fall, and then we can kind of have a good idea of where Trump is going.
Yeah, I will say just real quick that Marco Rubio, although people have reported that Trump's expected to appoint him, I don't think that anything official has been made where it's like that's definitely a done deal for sure. So people can go to my profile feed. I'm going to make this my my pinned post. If you go to my profile, you'll see a post I shared where I'm trying to, with a bunch of other people, get hashtag no Rubio trending on X, kind of like we did no to Pompeo and Nikki Haley. So definitely worth trying to get our voices to be heard. So I mean, maybe he's leaning that way now, but if he sees enough negative feedback, it's possible that maybe he'll continue to cycle through neocons till he finds one marginally better. So again, wield that influence where we can. Jess, if you had something to say, or do you want to say something quick, or do you want to move on to the next speaker?
I don't really have anything much to add besides, I agree that it's, we'll see what happens. There's probably going to be some good appointments and some bad appointments, but yeah, I was thinking we'd move on to the next speaker. Kareem's had his hand up, so I say we go to him next.
Kareem, the floor is yours.
All right, so I know Jacob personally, good guy, and Jacob has had extensive debates with my co-host as well on the subject. So for me, I'm looking at the appointments, but for me, what I kind of feel is that every politician is going to go eventually to the establishment, not because Trump is good or bad, but the system itself is bad and it tends to create bad people. So it's a product of your environment. And that's what I really feel. So while he might have some good, I like getting rid of the Department of Education. So that's good. I like the concealed carry. That's good. Getting a lot, if there's an advisory position in Doge and they get rid of a bunch of government waste, that'll be good. Auditing the Federal Reserve, perfect. But yeah, and even ending the Ukraine war, we'll see. There's some people in his that he recently approved to me that is kind of interesting because there's a few people who are really hawkish, and there's some people who I think are reasonable. JD Vance, maybe Vivek and JD Vance and some other folks. But what I really want to emphasize is this, and the thing I really didn't like was this, especially among libertarians, which is an individualist movement. A lot of people were arguing that, like, if we didn't win this election or if Trump didn't win this election, it's like the end of everything and the end of all time. And to me, I don't like putting a ton of emphasis, especially in stuff that you can't control. And for me, it still has to come down to the community, to the state level and things like that. So now that the election's over, whoever he approves or doesn't approve, I think the position that I always take is, hey, do what you can for yourself, improve yourself as much as you can. And on top of that, try and improve your community. So I'm still, regardless, and it's not so much a question, but I'm still pushing for complete decentralization, or the scary A word, anarchy. And I'm still encouraging people to do that, to look into that, to look all the philosophies of Rothbard, to even look at people on the left and Bakunin, Kropotkin, whatever works for your community, and to figure out how to implement that. Because at the end of the day, while a politician may do some good things on one side of the aisle or the other, and I'm still a fan of Massey and Rand, you can't leave your collective destiny up to politicians. So, and especially it's telling to me that Larry Fink, who has more power, in my opinion, than almost anyone in America with his wealth, says he didn't care who won the election. So to me, let's still bring it back to the local level. Let's still work on creating our own societies. You know, what Project Decentralized Revolution was doing before this, let's keep doing that, and let's keep pushing towards educating our neighbors as much as possible and educating our friends. Because I really do believe, like, when my friend Daniel, or my friend Jacob, or my friend Hody says, no king but Christ, that's a good motto to live by, because you're not you're saying, hey, Christ is the only thing that has authority, and you're not acknowledging the state. If we can still get more people to not acknowledge the state as this magical thing, and just say, regardless if it's Trump, regardless if it's Putin, regardless if it's even someone I like Milei, the state has no legitimacy, and the only thing that has legitimacy is voluntary interactions between other human beings that they want to enter into, whether it's individualistic or more collectivist. And that's all I had to say.
That was well said. That's the horn I've been tooting for a while, or trumpet, or whatever the phrase is. At church, we pray for our leaders, and we've been praying for the election as it was coming up. And I know which way my church leans, and pretty much everyone voted for. But I was very strong on constantly reminding, it doesn't matter who wins. Jesus is the only king. He's over all of us. We shouldn't put our trust in our earthly, our earthly leaders, our earthly kings. I've really been, and they keep saying, thank you, Jessica, for reminding us of that, because you're right. And sometimes we think too much about this stuff. And
Yeah.
so that's just been huge for me. And I just love that you said it. It was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm all right.
I wrote a blog for my church in the lead up to the election called Christ is King, Not Caesar, because I wanted to kind of make the same point. It's tough. I mean, even like I noticed just the effect it had on me when I voted for Trump, that like the minute you participate in the political process, it has a psychological effect on you. And if you're not like really grounded in your faith, if you're not really grounded in your principles, if you're not really self-aware, it's easy to get caught up in that. And although I don't take what some of the Christian anarchist purists take is, which is that like voting is consenting to the system, and when you're voting, you're essentially saying I want this person to be my ruler and it's like an act of worship. Like I don't agree with that from a like that's because that's kind of like a legalistic dogmatic approach. But there is a kernel of truth there, which is that it can be the case that happens, and it's easy to fall into that for a lot of people, and we have to always the way I try to approach it is, like I actually agree with everything you said, Kareem. The solutions are in our communities and local, and as Christians we believe that the solutions are ultimately the gospel, and as John alluded to earlier, it's we should be focusing on not on the state's power to save people, but on the Holy Spirit's power to transform people's lives from the inside out. The only thing we should be focused on doing at the federal level is trying to get them out of the way as much as we can so that we can get more done at the local level, I think. If you want to take 10 seconds to say something quick, Kareem, and that's what I'd love to keep going, but I got to go to bed at some point, so we got to roll through these speakers.
All right, I'll roll through it. Aside from, I agree with you on the Holy Spirit. Aside from that, I know there's libertarian Republican unity. Also, me and Jeremiah are trying to do anarchist unity, whatever type of anarchist, left, right, center, vegan, Christian. You can check out my work at Anarch Unity, and also Jeremiah Talks. Go look at his stuff, and Keith Preston, Attack the System. Because ultimately, I think if we bring anarchists together, we can win. That's it. Building a different coalition than what's going on. Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks, Kareem.
I'll just add this super quick. I thought this when Kareem was speaking, and then again when you were speaking just now, Jacob. We need to be a little bit more like the Amish, in the sense that, well, you can do a lot of things there, but in the sense that they're not really actively involved in politics, but they came out in droves to defend themselves, especially after Amos Miller has been attacked by the state so much. So they don't view the government as their God, absolutely not, but they saw that as something they needed to do to stand up for their brethren. And so sometimes I think we need to look at politics that way a little bit more as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say. And I know you had something, but then we can move on to Stephen.
No, I was gonna say the same thing. Let's move on to, well said, Jessica. I agree. Stephen, if you want to go ahead and make your question/comment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment real quickly. Earlier, it was mentioned about how do we reach out to people with this? How do we talk to people? I found really in the past few years, really it was 2020. Believe it or not, I listened to, I was a Ron Paul guy in 08 and 12, and it was like 10 years of listening to the Tom Woods Show before I really sat down and read The Anatomy of the State. And I said, okay, yeah, I had put it off for so long, but I was like, yeah, I'm an anarchist now. And then when you talk to people who are Christians about that, it's kind of a shocking thing that, well, you're an anarchist, what? And then the more you look at the scripture, though, I just wanted to mention really quickly, Romans 13 was mentioned earlier. I personally don't believe that Romans 13 requires there to be an arbitrary body known as the state. I think the word there really is talking about the surpassing authority, the authority that's in the greatest amount of power in that moment.
The higher
so the
powers.
command is, so the command is whatever that is, you do what it says. And some people object to anarchy by saying, well, then if there's no state, then, Google would become the state. Okay. All right. That's fine. I can still follow the commands of God in that sense. I mean, but I just wanted to briefly mention that because it's kind of allowed me to reach out to people from a standpoint that as we talk about sometimes, this is not really a utopian viewpoint. This is a viewpoint that's basically saying, hey, I'm flexible in this world, in this sphere. And as we talk about with the whole election aspect, I'm willing to take whatever is between tyranny and full, complete freedom. And I should be able to take that, under the Lord and follow his commands in that way. So I thought that might be helpful to kind of mention to those that are thinking about how do I reach people? How do I talk to my family about things like this? Or how do I talk to church members about this? I think number one, as is mentioned, the Lord is in control. you look, you trace government all through the Bible. The very first human government was seemingly created by a guy named Nimrod in the book of Genesis. And Nimrod, if you actually look at the meaning of that word, this is not a definite for sure, but it could mean some aspect of he rebelled. And so that's an interesting thing. You've got the first human government in the recorded scripture, and the guy who created it is a guy named he rebelled. And obviously God's not happy with that, because what those governments lead to, the kingdoms in Shinar and in that area, what do they lead to? The Tower of Babel, Genesis 11. So that within itself was the first world government. I'm sure you guys have talked about this a lot, but I figured that would be helpful to some, because there is a strain here for us to look in scripture to see, okay, yeah, I do believe, by the way, that God expects me to pay my taxes. God expects me to do these things in a sense where it's like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can up to a point, right? And if that point is where, you're telling me I can't worship with the saints, well, no, I'm going to disobey that. If that point is I can't feed my family in some particular, there's other things you could say. Anyway, my point is ultimately that we need to follow what the Lord says, and do this in a way, and to reach out in such a way where we're making it clear this is not all or nothing. I'm happy to reach any point as close as we can get to the full abolition of the state. But even then, if that never happens, I can still be content. I can still work in my life and glorify God in my life. So.
I love that. And on the comment of Google will become the state, how is that different than now? I don't think people realize that when they ask that question or they make that point. I had a whole nother thought and it just went out of my mind. I know that we are coming to a close soon, and Sarah would love to speak, and I don't know if Albert wanted to.
I do see that we have Diego back in here. And sorry, I was getting my daughter from practice, so I don't know if you guys noticed that already. But since we missed him in the time slot we had him in for earlier, I was wondering if you guys would mind if we see if he was interested in coming up and talking to us now.
I was just going to ask you that.
Okay, let me see.
Do you mind if I add a little bit something to? I loved what Steven just said. To tell you the truth, I look at it a little bit differently, and you guys can stop me if you want. But I am not religious, but I am not anti-religious either. I'm more of spiritual, and so I believe that we are here as we're part of the universe and God and everything like that. And so which is very religious in its own mind. I just don't pretend to one religion in itself. But that being said, yes, we're individuals and we're here experiencing life as individuals and learning our lessons and everything. And then to that pretend, we need to be individualists. We don't need somebody who's coming in here and taking advantage and government and dictating everything in our life. We're supposed to be here to live our life and live our life to the best way that we're supposed to be, and as individuals, as long as we don't hurt anybody else, the golden rule, that's the way we're supposed to be here. And to have a government and omnipresent government oppressing us and everything, that's just it's against our nature, to tell you the truth. And
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna have to switch us over now. I got Diego up. Thank you guys for sharing. Diego is with Defend the Guard, and this is something we feel really strongly about. He can tell you guys not only a little bit about Defend the Guard, but also I want to hear from him about when's they had this election cycle. So go ahead, Diego.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, what was that last part? The last sentence? I missed that part.
Oh, just like the wins for Defend the Guard this election cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say we're getting a bunch. I'd say the wins is we got filed in 30 states. We
Oh,
moved
wait,
to,
Diego, sorry. Just in case, do you mind just
yeah,
explaining a little bit about Defend the Guard first, and then they can understand the ramifications of these wins?
sure. So I'll break it down into separate categories. One, it's a bill that focuses on states reasserting their rights on matters of foreign policy. I'll describe how that happens. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 is the one that puts um, the war making responsibilities under Congress. I'm sure most people understand that. So what this bill does is it says without that, right, which would Congress would have to formally declare war. Without that, wherever this bill's move forward and passed, that the states would withhold their National Guard from any active overseas combat without a formal declaration of war. Very simple. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's basically make them do the process that they're constitutionally required to.
Yeah, it could just easily be called follow the Constitution bill.
Right. Okay. Thank you for breaking it down a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the wins are, look, we're getting introduced in 30 states. We moved past 3 chambers. We moved through the New Hampshire House, which is the 3rd largest chamber in the English speaking world behind Congress and Parliament. Right. So that's a pretty big thing. There's 400 members in the New Hampshire House. We moved through the Idaho Senate, and we moved through the Arizona Senate with every single Republican co-sponsoring it. So we had all the Republicans co-sponsor, which means we already had the votes before we even went to a committee hearing. It's been heard. It's been put through committees in places like Montana, but also endorsements have come out everywhere from Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, that are members of the Freedom Caucus, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tulsi, Bobby Kennedy have come out in support of this, and now the new Secretary of Defense, which I'm sure people have a problem with, but I will definitely take it if the Secretary of Defense is on record saying he really likes this bill. Because now when I go to introduce it in committee hearings and when it gets put up on the floor, I can just show all of them, and especially when the Adjutant General shows up to contest this, I can say, well, your boss seems to like it, so now what? So that is one of the biggest wins is we keep borrowing institutional support from other people and allies and all that stuff. We keep moving it forward. The bill is essentially in forward motion. It has not. We're not losing, places where, we got it through the chamber and the next we can't get it through a committee the next year. The bill, it's like what Jeff Dice once said, it's kind of like you're standing on top, or they're standing on top of a cliff yelling at the tsunami to stop. There's no putting it back. The toothpaste is outside the tube, and there's enough grassroots momentum to where they're just not going to be able to stop it. It's going to happen.
That's awesome. And you've been doing a lot of great work. One of the things that I really like about Defend the Guard is a lot of times we think as libertarians, especially, we don't even know where to start, And I think that this is a great piece of legislation that we wholeheartedly support. That is a great one to put our efforts behind because you guys have done so much work already with figuring out how to be effective in moving it forward. You guys have figured out things like try to partner with American Legion, and I forget the name of the other one now, but you figured out ways to actually get in these legislators' heads and make them, move on this bill in the way we want them to. And I think it's pretty cool because, you've got scripts, you've got information, you've got packets, and you've got a huge phone banking group. And it's kind of it's really hard to pick out whatever each of our own pet legislation might be that we want to see. It's when we want to see liberty progress, we got to jump on board with something that's kind of gaining steam already. And I think that that's why libertarians, not only is this in alignment with our values, but it's something that's there's a path forward already. And I think, and the more of us that go on it, the better it's going to be and the more effective we're going to be.
Yeah, I think it's a good lesson for, well, I would be shocked to find out that for libertarians, war wasn't a big issue. So I would be a little befuddled if I found that that was the case. But even if it's not, what I would encourage, and I think that's what, you get, is that you've seen how this stuff works, is that I guess the way we'd put it is we're scrappy. We do a lot with a little, and people don't realize how little. And so when we get it moved through committee hearings and we're doing all this stuff and we're applying the tools and we're applying the pressures and we're being creative and we're finding new ways, hey, switch numbers, do this, what's that guy saying? And people are talking to each other. Just realize that probably there's a collective network of somewhere between 40 to 70 people on any given day. And on average, it'll probably be about 40, 45 people that come together to make calls that have pushed us through committees, that have passed us through entire chambers. And so when you're thinking to yourself, well, if I'm going to do this, I've got to build up a huge nest egg of stuff and resources and software, and I got to have a huge army. And then once I'm ready and I fully plan this out, and you've completely given yourself analysis paralysis, and if you would just see that it was just a bunch of punks and rebels and misfits and just people that wanted to do, and then they figured out how. That's the most beautiful part about this, is because I know that there's a lot of resentment within the libertarian sphere, big and small, L, just because there's losses. This gives you a little bit of control. And you can go, okay, not everything's futile. There's ways to do this. There's ways to move this forward. You can learn, you can grow, you can feel a little bit emboldened. And it's kind of nice. Colin Quinn had a joke that said, rich people call their senator, middle class call their congressman, and poor people just yell at the TV. I would argue that poor people now just yell on Twitter. This is a way to actually do something to where you're like, wow, I couldn't believe it. We did something. So I think that's one of the biggest silver linings, is that for a lot of people that felt like there was nothing they could do but yell and retweet, there's actually an option for you to mobilize and figure out. And by the way, I'd qualify this with, you're probably going to do this really, really bad. You're going to it's going to be a little retarded. I'm not going to lie. But with a little bit of finesse, a little smoothing out, people do get better at this. And so I think that's actually one of the coolest parts about this whole thing, is just watch people sort of like realize and figure out, dude, I can actually get a win out of all this. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's probably the best part is, there is a path to victory. It's not just some futile exercise or like symbolic gesture. Like, this is something where we can actually make a difference and get it over the goal line. So that is definitely one of the great things about it. I think somebody had their hand raised. I don't know if Mayor Adam Land over here. I don't know. Aaron, did you have something for Diego and for Defend the Guard? It looks like he's doing a hand raise.
I have a quick question. Is this federal that you're talking about, or is this state?
State. This is state level legislation that focuses on the National Guard specifically.
That's perfect. That's what I thought you were going for, and that's perfect. That's amazing. Awesome.
Oh, go ahead, Aaron, and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much. I do apologize for the technical difficulties. I am Mayor Aaron Lamb of Keensburg, Colorado. I'm very excited to be able to join this space. Just given that we are on the topic of Defend the Guard, wanted to update. I am very, very hopeful that we will get it at least introduced here in Colorado. I am even more hopeful that we'll be able to get it passed first try. I had put in a lot of work contacting all of what I assume to be the winners of the incoming legislation for Colorado, and just got a call today from someone that I'd spoken to back in October or even September, that's in the Senate, that is a Democrat. Again, we're in Colorado, a Democrat majority. So in my mind, if we don't have their support, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. And this person is very interested in getting us a House sponsor and is very excited about getting this pushed through. So I've been very excited about this effort, and I do want to say thank you to Diego. We had spoken about some of my strategy, and I'm very happy to say that it's looking pretty good. I also wanted to just share some other wins here in Colorado. So again, I'm in a fairly small town. We do have 2 libertarians that are on the board. My mayor pro tem is also the president of our school board, and we were able to get 1 other elected in this election. So that brings us to 3 out of 7, which is the highest ratio in Colorado in any town since the early 90s. And I'm very hopeful that we'll get 1 more of my allies that got elected to the board to also switch over. But regardless, that brings us to a majority of 5-2. So I'm really excited about what's to come here in Keensburg. And we've just been making some really good strides. And I don't know if you all know, but libertarians win at a rate of around 33% at the local level. And so I really hope more libertarians and more in the Christian caucus choose to run at that level.
Yeah, you guys, I would like to point out, if you like scroll to the top of the space, if you click on that and ignore my typo, please, of the says he. Just, I've been doing like 5 things at once. But if you click on that tweet at the top of the space, it says get involved with Defend the Guard. Once you click on the tweet, the bringourtroopshome.us is a hyperlink, so it'll take you there. I just wanted to point that out real quick. And Diego, is there anything else that you want to say about Defend the Guard, or even any comments about the election cycle? Any of the appointments have been made? You can comment on any of it if you're, unless you want to talk more about Defend the Guard.
No, I don't have to talk forever and ever. What I guess I would tell everybody here is just guessing probably how everybody feels. It's just manage expectations. That on the same day we find out that Marco Rubio is I don't know if it has been confirmed or not, but the Secretary of State, and at the same time they put Vivek and Elon Musk on Doge, and so we're kind of living in the most ironic of all timelines. What I would encourage you is to take a little bit of that ownership back into your life. Take a leap of faith. I know for the most part, most libertarians haven't really done a whole lot of like everybody's done sign waving and this and that. What I mean is like effective grassroots that really just puts politicians in a lot of pain. And so what I would encourage you to do is nobody was there for me when I wanted to figure out what to do. I listened to Ron Paul and I was energized and I was trying to figure out what in the world, and I didn't know what to do, but I just started doing things, and I slowly started figuring it out. And I would encourage everybody to do that, because you kind of realize that you become your own army after a while. So I just honestly think it's good for you to realize that you don't just have to yell at the TV when things go wrong. You can actually get together, draw up a battle plan, mobilize, and that gives you back a lot of autonomy. And again, I don't have to qualify this with the fact that we all live in a broken, fallen world, but there's something to be done there. You don't just have to, yell at the sky. There's things that you can do. I would encourage you to do it. Even if you don't know what you're going to do, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And luckily, I'm happy to know certain people that at this point, I've just seen people over and over and over again kind of like figure out what they're doing from they don't know what they're doing to they kind of know what they're doing to. There's people that can do a pretty good job all by themselves. And I encourage you and anybody listening to go and do that. And even if Defend the Guard's not your biggest issue, it's a great way to get involved, learn, and then just turn that and what you learned and use that for your pet project, is to get mobilized, because then there's something beautiful of just being able to fight for what it is that you care about, and not in some like, I don't speak the Queen's English, but like showing up to a party and voting on the rules, and in the next 6 months we'll reconvene and all that stuff. Is like, no, I want to, not literally, but I kind of want to put a lot of politicians and slam their head against the wall and put the fear of God in them and make them vote my way. And I want to bend them to my will, and I want to win. And there's ways to do that, again, peacefully. But I encourage people to get involved. I think it'll change your life.
I think that's great. And unless Albert has anything to add or to ask or anything, I think ending on that encouragement and including the Ron Paul advice of just go do something I think that's wonderful. Unless, like I said, unless Albert has anything.
No, I don't have anything. It's been a great discussion, and I thank y'all for helping organize it. And hope y'all have a great night.
Awesome. Albert, did you want to do any plugs?
Yeah, I think it went all really well, and thank everyone who participated, and hopefully we can move the liberty movement forward in a great way, both in the administration and outside, to put pressure on both ways, so that we can move the liberty movement forward in a smart way. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you all next time.
Awesome. And I just want to say, on behalf of the Christian Caucus, I know it's late on the East Coast where Jacob is, and he's got kids and he's got to go to bed, and Kara's dealing with her kids right now as well. They just got home trying to have dinner. So I'm going to say, on behalf of the Christian Caucus, thank you everyone for showing up tonight, being here, participating, listening, your questions. Thank you so much to our guests. We really appreciate this. As you can tell, it went longer than we had planned. That just tells me there's interest here. We need to do more of this, which we plan to. So I guess with that, we will say good night, and God bless.
All right. Well, that was a long stream. I'm very happy with how it went. I had to step away there towards the end, but wow, that was like a 2.5 hour stream. Um, so for those of you who enjoyed that, make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. Make sure that you are following me on X, but also go check out the Christian Caucus. That is at LP Christ Caucus, which it says right here. Actually, let me put that back up there. Actually, it might be hard for you to read that, but it's right there, and I just spelled it out for you, so hopefully you can go and find that. But that's all I have for you guys for tonight for this stream. I'll be back again this Saturday for another stream. Hope you guys enjoy the content. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys tonight. If you're still up or you're watching this later, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.